The event that broke all I knew about martial arts did not occur in battle. It arrived in silently. 15 years of instruction, thousands of hours of practice, and hundreds of techniques all undone in one day with my wooden dummy. For 15 years, I chased mastery with zeal, amassing skills like precious stones, certain that each new form brought me closer to perfection. Each action has been catalogued, each stroke honed, and each block mastered. My arsenal is ever growing and increasing. Then arrived that afternoon. My arms were exhausted, and my mind had been shorn of its customary control. So I launched punch after punch at the wooden dummy. And at that moment of full exhaustion, when my muscles could no longer hold their taut postures and my mind could no longer comprehend their learned patterns, I saw through the deception. I stood there, a man dying of thirst and lugging an ocean. Every skill I acquired, every approach I polished, were not stepping stones to freedom, but rather shackles that bound me to an endlessly convoluted route. The burden of knowledge had become my jail. Martial arts tell us that mastery is achieved via the accumulation of skills, power, and speed. But at that moment of clarity, I saw the core falsehood. True mastery is not based on what you bring to yourself. It all depends on how much you're willing to give up. The illusion of accumulation. Water doesn't learn to flow. It does not practice flowing or acquire strategies for flowing. Water flows naturally. When I was exhausted and had forgotten all of my acquired tactics, I saw this reality behind the layers of intricacy. Our fundamental essence is like water. This discovery shattered the fundamental foundations of my faith. I had spent years ascending the mountain of martial arts, only to realize that what I needed was in the valley beneath. While the world taught me to construct technical barriers, actual fighting required the bravery to breach them. Where tradition instructed me to collect, genuine mastery murmured, "Let go." That afternoon marked the beginning of my genuine journey, which was one of reduction rather than acquisition. It was not a search for complexity, but rather a return to simplicity. It wasn't about learning. It was about unlearning everything that stood between me and my true nature. The reality I uncovered that day challenged all we knew about mastery, power, and the fundamental essence of human potential. Initially, I thought my route was obvious. Train harder than everyone else. Master each technique. Perfect every step. This was the martial arts tradition handed down through generations. A road of unending refining and perpetual accumulation. My professors spoke about mastery like it was a faraway mountaintop. Each method represented another step up the mountain. Each form mastered represented another degree accomplished. We measured progress by the number of moves we could perform, the forms we could demonstrate, and the techniques we could use. Every day, I worked myself to the brink of exhaustion, certain that the key to genuine martial arts proficiency resided somewhere inside this unrelenting quest. But even then, something felt off. During sparring, I discovered that even the most technically flawless techniques sometimes failed against basic, straightforward assault. Students who understood fewer methods but moved naturally may occasionally outperform those who had mastered numerous forms. These insights nagged me like splinters in my head that I couldn't shake. I watched experts display complicated methods with immaculate accuracy, yet in real battle, they used basic, rudimentary motions. Why, if intricate forms were the apex of martial arts, why did we forsake them when our lives were really on the line? The conflict intensified with each passing day. Traditional teachings emphasized patience and the necessity to master each technique over thousands of repetitions. However, I started to see that increased repetition typically resulted in more rigidity. The longer a learner trained in traditional traditions, the more attached they grew to them. Their actions were predictable, and their answers became mechanical. The training that was supposed to set them free has turned into a prison. When I started hunting for this design, I found it everywhere. Students who had studied for decades moved like robots, each technique flawlessly done yet oddly lifeless. They had attained technical competence, but they lacked something vital. They had mastered their forms, but they had lost the spontaneity and spontaneous flow that made martial arts come alive. I'd lost something much more valuable than I could have imagined. My innate ability to adjust to the situation and adapt to the flow. As I continued along the conventional road, my observations started to cause increasing strain inside me. As I advanced, I became more aware that something fundamental was going away. It was like seeing sand go through my fingers. The more I tried to achieve mastery, the more it escaped me. My first significant discovery came from utter and tragic failure. I'd been working hard to improve my punching power, tensing every muscle and attempting to put as much energy into each hit as possible. My body was like iron, with muscles coiled like springs, ready to burst. But one day, a visiting master wanted to feel my most powerful punch. I summoned every ounce of strength, clenched every fiber in my being, and hit with what I thought was deadly force. The master simply smiled and said, "Now hit me again, but this time let your punch flow like water from a broken dam." I did not comprehend. How may letting go lead to increased power? It went against all I understood about strength. But I tried, and then something remarkable occurred. Without stress, planning, or accumulating force, my punch had more power than I had ever created before. This one incident completely altered my perception of power. I had previously assumed that power derived from tension, the accumulation of force, and the hardening of the body. But actual strength, I learned, sprang from the lack of stress. It resulted from letting go. Consider how a whip delivers its terrible snap. It is not via stiffness or tension, but through the perfect flow of energy, the release of power, rather than its accumulation. The lower the tension of the whip, the more severe its effect. I started applying this approach to everything I did. When I relaxed totally, my kicks were really fast. My obstacles became impregnable after I let go of the strain. When I stopped attempting to gain power, I finally understood what true power is. However, the most significant feature of this finding was not physical. This was. I realized that just as physical tension blocks true power, mental tension blocks true understanding. The harder I tried to force insight, the more it eluded me. But the moment I let go of trying, understanding flowed naturally. This revelation reached far beyond martial arts. I began to see how we create tension in every aspect of our lives, believing that control comes through force and power comes through effort. We tense our minds trying to solve problems, and we tense our spirits trying to find peace. In doing so, we block the very thing we seek. The truth about power is counterintuitive. It doesn't come from gathering, but from releasing. Not from tensing, but from flowing. Not from forcing, but from allowing. This is why a small stream flowing constantly can carve through solid rock, while a tense muscle eventually fails from its own effort. I had to unlearn decades of conditioning to grasp this truth. Every instinct tells us to tense up in the face of challenge, to gather our strength, to brace for impact. But true power lies in the opposite direction, in complete relaxation, in perfect flow, in the absence of resistance. My second revelation struck me like lightning during a moment of perfect stillness. For years, I had trained to increase my speed, pushing my body to move faster, always faster. I studied the mechanics of motion, calculated angles of attack, measured the milliseconds between thought and action. I believed speed was a product of intensity, of burning desire, of relentless drive. But one evening, as I sat in my garden watching a cat hunt, everything changed. The cat was perfectly still, yet when a leaf fell within its reach, It moved with impossible speed, faster than any trained martial artist I'd ever seen. In that moment, I understood true speed comes not from agitation, but from stillness, not from preparation, but from emptiness. Consider your own experience. When you touch something hot, how long does it take you to react? There is no thought, no preparation, no gathering of energy. The response is instantaneous because your mind is empty of resistance. This is the secret of true speed of mind, like still water, ready to respond at the slightest disturbance. Third revelation, presence versus preparation. I began to understand why the greatest masters spoke of no mind. I had always thought this was mystical nonsense, but now I saw its profound truth. When your mind is filled with thoughts of speed, calculations of timing, and preparations for movement, you become slower. Each thought is like a ripple in the water, disturbing your natural response. Think of how quickly you catch a falling object when you're not thinking about catching it. The moment you become conscious of the act, you slow down. Your very attempt to be fast makes you slow. This is the paradox of speed. The harder you try to achieve it, the more it eludes you. I discovered that speed isn't something you create, it's something you allow. It's already within you. Watch a child react to a sudden sound. Their response is perfect, instantaneous. They haven't learned to think first, to prepare, or to gather themselves. They simply respond. The traditional martial arts world teaches us to prepare for combat, to anticipate, to ready ourselves. But I found that true combat speed comes from the opposite, from being completely unprepared, utterly empty, totally responsive to the moment. It's like the surface of a clear lake, undisturbed by ripples of thought or intention. This revelation transformed my training entirely. Instead of practicing to be faster, I began practicing to be stiller. Instead of training my body to move quickly, I trained my mind to be still. The return to simplicity. The quieter I became, the faster I moved. The more I embraced stillness, the more explosive my movements grew. This truth stretches far beyond martial arts. In any field that demands quick responses, whether it's making business decisions, creating art, or handling emergency speed, comes from mental stillness, not mental activity. When your mind is still, your responses arise naturally, without the delay of thought or the friction of doubt. The ultimate paradox of speed is this: it doesn't come from movement, but from stillness. It doesn't come from preparation, but from emptiness. It doesn't come from intensity, but from serenity. Just as a clear mirror reflects instantly, a still mind responds instantly. This is the true meaning of what the ancient masters called being like water. Final truth, my third revelation came at the greatest cost, through an encounter that shook me to my core. I had been training for an important demonstration, perfecting a complex sequence of movements for months. Every angle was measured, every response calculated, every possibility planned for. I believed completely that I was prepared. Then came the moment that changed everything. During a casual sparring session with an untrained but naturally gifted opponent, something unprecedented happened. None of my prepared responses worked. None of my practiced techniques found their mark. My years of preparation crumbled before pure, unfiltered instinct. In that humbling moment, I glimpsed a truth so profound that it would forever change my understanding of martial arts. I had spent years preparing for imagined scenarios, countless hours practicing predetermined responses. But reality, pure, immediate, ever-changing reality, cared nothing for my preparations. Consider a master calligrapher. They don't practice by planning where each stroke will go. They immerse themselves in the present moment, allowing their art to flow naturally from decades of practice, transformed into instinct. In that moment of creation, there is no preparation, only presence. No planning, only pure response. This is the fundamental difference between knowledge and wisdom. Knowledge is knowing what might happen. Wisdom is responding perfectly to what is happening. Knowledge lives in the future, in the realm of preparation and planning. Wisdom lives in the present, in the realm of direct perception and immediate response. I realized that all my years of preparation, all my carefully constructed responses, were actually barriers between me and reality, like a musician so focused on reading the notes that they forget to hear the music. I had become trapped in the prison of my own preparation. The greatest irony was this: true mastery, I discovered, isn't about being prepared for everything. It's about being ready for anything. There's a profound difference. Preparation is about the future, about trying to control what hasn't happened yet. Readiness is about the present, about being fully alive to what is happening now. Think of how a baby learns to walk. They don't study physics. They don't calculate angles and forces. They don't prepare for every possible scenario. They simply engage with the present moment, falling and rising, failing and learning, until walking becomes as natural as breathing. This is the path to true mastery. What I had mistaken for preparation was actually a form of resistance to the uncertainty of the moment, resistance to the fluidity of reality. Every prepared response was a way of saying, I don't trust my instincts. I don't trust the present moment. I don't trust myself. The truth that finally dawned on me was this: no amount of preparation can match the power of pure presence. No predetermined response can match the perfection of spontaneous action. No acquired knowledge can match the wisdom of instinct, refined by practice, but unleashed in the moment. This revelation completed my understanding. The three truths merged into one. Power comes not from tension, but release. Speed comes not from effort, but stillness. Mastery comes not from preparation, but presence. Together they point to the ultimate truth. We are already complete, already perfect in our ability to respond to life. Our training should not be about adding to ourselves, but about removing the obstacles to our natural expression. So here is the great circle of mastery, the truth that emerges when all revelations merge into one. Power flows when we release tension. Speed emerges from stillness. Mastery arises from presence. These are not three separate truths, but one truth, viewed from three angles, like light splitting through a prism. What appears complex at first becomes devastatingly simple. We begin in simplicity, move through complexity, only to return to simplicity on a higher level. Like a spiral ascending, each turn brings us back to the same point, but with deeper understanding. The novice strikes naturally, without thought. Then comes the long journey through technique, through form, through endless refinement. And finally, if we're fortunate, we return to striking naturally, but now. This naturalness contains all we've learned, transformed into pure instinct. This is the hidden pattern of all mastery. The child walks without knowledge. The student analyzes every aspect of walking. The master walks without thought again, but their walking now contains everything they've learned, distilled into pure movement. Consider the circle I've traveled. I began seeking power through force, only to discover power through relaxation. I pursued speed through effort, only to find speed through stillness. I sought mastery through preparation, only to realize mastery through presence. Each time, the end was hidden in the beginning. This is the ultimate paradox of training. We practice diligently to reach a state where practice is no longer necessary. We accumulate knowledge to arrive at a wisdom that transcends knowledge. We master techniques to reach a mastery beyond technique. The complexity of martial arts, all the forms, techniques, theories, and methodesis, like a vast ocean we must cross. But once we reach the other shore, we realize that the ocean itself was an illusion. The other shore was always right here. We just needed the journey to realize it. After all these years, all these struggles, all these revelations, I finally understand the truth about mastery. It isn't something we achieve, it's something we uncover. It isn't something we reach, it's something we reveal. The master isn't one who has learned 1,000 things. The master is one who has discovered the single thing behind the 1,000. Look at water in its simplicity. It contains all wisdom. It flows without planning. It adapts without thinking. It overcomes obstacles not through force, but through perfect yielding. When it is still, it reflects the entire universe. When it moves, nothing can resist it. This isn't just poetry. It's the deepest truth of existence. My journey has brought me full circle. I began searching for extraordinary power, only to discover that true power lies in becoming utterly ordinary. I sought to transcend my natural limits, only to find that nature itself was the ultimate master. I tried to become something special, only to realize that being completely natural is the greatest achievement. This is the final paradox, the ultimate truth. Mastery isn't about rising above our nature. It's about sinking completely into it. It isn't about becoming superhuman. It's about becoming fully human. It isn't about conquering yourself. It's about discovering who you've been all along. Remember this. The cup is useful, not because of its substance, but because of its emptiness. The door is useful, not because of its wood, but because of its opening. And you are most powerful, not because of what you possess, but because of what you let flow through you. In the end, there is no end. There is only this moment, this breath, this perfect expression of who you truly are. That is mastery, that is truth, that is freedom.